Melissa, gosh, we have so much to talk about because you have so much going on. But one of the main reasons you're here is to talk about your new memoir, which is your second memoir. How can you possibly write two?
Well, when you write one at the age of 40, you realize that you at 40 you think, oh my gosh, I've lived so much life. But then when you turn 60, you're like, I was just getting started, because so much happens from in my life, so much happened from 40 to 60 that is it really makes up so much more of what I am now. And the first part was just kind of the history, the growing up and how did I, make it and that sort of thing. And then this one is how did I survive.
In fact, I know that your first memoir was called The Truth Is,
Mhm.
and that was, as you mentioned, released in 2001, so 22 years ago. And you say you've come around to a different kind of understanding in the second part of life. So let's start there, specifically with what happened to you one summer night back in 2003. You say that you had an experience one night that was that jump started, I guess, a spiritual awakening for you.
Mhm.
So what happened, Melissa? And is everything sort of in your life before this and after it? Do you use it to delineate your life in some ways?
Yes, and because it was so close to my cancer diagnosis, both of those things, one right after the other, is what really divides my early life and then the rest of my life. Because the and now that again, now that I'm in my 60s, I think that all of us sort of have a spirit awakening. There a soul awakening in all of us. That I think up till your 40s, you're working and trying to make it, and you're physically action oriented, and then you complete some journeys, you actually get some places, and you start realizing, wait a minute, it's not really about the thing or the place, it's about the feeling, and it's all the interesting things that happen to me along the way. It's the journey. And so how I lived my life, how I thought of my life really changed in this. And my awakening came through plant spirit, and it doesn't or plant medicine. And it doesn't, it's different for everyone. That's not the only way. There's all kinds of ways people can have an awakening in their life. And mine just happened to be through an unintentional heroic dose of cannabis. And it was mind shattering to me.
In fact, it really kind of set you off on this kind of psychedelic journey, if you will. You say, I then received a kind of download of information and the arrival of a new understanding. And that understanding, well, you tell me, what was that
Okay.
understanding?
Well, a lot of people talk about how it feels like a download of information. That's a common uh, description of a moment. Sometimes it happens when a near death experience or something will sort of put this off. But the understanding is it, it's so hard to describe because I tell people it cannot be taught, it can only be learned. And words don't teach, but I'll do my best. That it is it's an understanding of a certain oneness of humanity, of a common um, a commonality between everyone, where you can say, what I mean, I could say it's all love, and that's a really simple thing to say, but to me that is the truth. Everything is love, and everything is made up of love, and love is what I describe the particles. You can go into quantum physics, and they're saying the same thing, they're just saying it scientifically. I'm saying it from a more spiritual sort of esoteric way. Everyone's made up of the same particles, and how they're put together is up to us and our minds. Our minds are so much more powerful than we know. And you can find there's a lot of teachings, there's a lot of modern day teachings of this, and a lot of, ancient teachings that sort of speak to the very same thing.
How did it change you, Melissa? I mean, if it's all about love and we're all kind of connected and particles and all the things you just described, did it change you as a person? Did it make you relate to other people differently? Did it make you less angry? I mean, how does that manifest itself in daily behavior? And can I get me some of that cannabis?
Oh, yes. Well, New York, it's legal now. So, although California makes the best weed, but it changed me and my relationship to me. And that's the first and really most important relationship, is what I'm thinking about me, how I'm connected to me. Me meaning that inner being that we have, that thing that we say is either, critiquing us or all those things in our mind that we walk with every day. That relationship changes. You stop blaming things outside of you when you no longer take the manifested world personally. When you don't think something's or someone's after you, when you realize, oh, I'm creating this myself every day, and I have a choice how I'm going to respond to it. Am I just going to, if somebody pushes me, am I just going to push back? And then you create that energy. Or if someone pushes me, am I going to see it more through an eye of love and go, wow, that person must really be having a bad day. And I'm really grateful that I'm not having a bad day. And I'm grateful. And you just sort of channel your thought into more appreciation, more gratitude. You hear these things all the time. They're all la la, but it's truthful. Truthfully, if you practice these things on a real practical level, they can make a real big, large difference in your life.
I'm fascinated by this. How do you discipline yourself, or how do you get yourself in the mindset every day that I am going to see things through a prism of love? I'm going to try to seek understanding, and I'm not gonna have this short fuse, or I'm not gonna think ill of people. All the things that bring out the worst in us.
Well, first I realized it's an understanding that this is not sort of like a college degree where you get there and you're there, that and you have it forever and ever. It's a practice. It's like yoga. It's like you start yoga, you can barely bend over. And then after a while, you can bend. But there's no end to yoga. There's nobody that finishes yoga and I've done it and that's it. Now I'm yogi or something. It's just a practice you do every day. And this is the same thing. And there are little things that you can do that helps you. That's not that because by the time somebody you get something from someone in the outside world. And if the momentum that you've had going during the day is one of, oh, this is a bad day, I'm having a bad, I stubbed my toe, oh, now it's, and things grow, that momentum grows. And if somebody pushes you, you bet I'm going to shove them back at that point because I've let it grow. You go back to your beginning of your day, and the very moment you wake up, if you can just find something in that moment to be grateful for just a half a minute, then that can grow a little bit more. And you might get 10, 15, 20 minutes before you read an email and it sends you back into a bad place. But the more, well, you've heard the better it gets, the better it gets, because I'm sure you've also heard of the law of attraction. This is sort of what this is on, is you get what you're going to put out. So it's up to you. I realize I can't change anyone or anything. And once you give that up, then you're just working on yourself, going, all I can do is work on the way I feel, and I can be pointed towards happiness. So it's just a practice every day, and you don't. Yeah, there are times. I had a horrible day yesterday. My show last night. I'm glad you weren't there. It wasn't horrible, but for me it was, oh, this happened, this, the drums fell over, this sort of thing. It's just that kind of day that I was having that day. Today I'm not. I'm speaking to you. I'm having a much better day. It's going to be a great show tonight.
Well, it seems like you let things roll off your back too a lot more, and you don't let things fester, and you kind of release them out into the universe because it doesn't help to hold it in, right? I mean,
Yeah, there's a great book, Don Miguel Ruiz. A lot of people know this book, called the Four Agreements, and they're real simple. You don't take things personally, you don't assume, you do the best you can, and you are impeccable with your word. And those four things go very deeply. If you read the book, it's a very short book, and it's really just amazing. And you just the less you take personally in the world or assume. I used to always assume I knew what everyone was thinking, and I was going to make everything in the room okay before I got there, or before anybody else could say anything, But you really have to let that go. There's a lot of wasted energy.
would you say you're now a much happier person, Melissa?
Oh
Do you
yeah.
feel settled and happy? Because you have been through a lot. You've had a lot of turmoil in your life. You lost your son. You had a very distant mom. It made me so sad about what you wrote about your mom. I'm going to read this. You
Uh-huh.
described your dad as a nice guy and fun parent, but your mom seemed pretty unhappy and you were determined not to be like her. And you write, as I grew up, what became clear was my mother's lack of enthusiasm for her life. She didn't want anything more than to go through the motions of work, to come home, get dinner on the table with a sigh and very little eye contact, and then get lost inside one of her many classics, books that transported her out of her life. When I pull from my memories, I see my mother sitting in her favorite living room chair, angled down toward her book, a glass of something at her side. I love this line, by the way, that I'm about to read. The tableau carries with it an untouchable aloneness, an image bringing into high relief the signal radiating off of her, telling me she didn't want to be approached or interrupted.
Yeah, that's and there you go. And you know what? I'm grateful. I truly am. There's because of that, I was sent on a journey of looking for that comfort outside of myself. I went through some heavy relationships because of that, because I wanted that person to fill that up, but not until I realized it's up to me to fill that part of me up, to love me. And then once I could do that, once I started doing, then I have a relationship now where I don't need that person to do that, and it's the most loving relationship I've ever had, because we both are coming from a place of nurturing ourselves, and I know that I'm more available to my children because of that, because I don't have that.
Do you understand your mom better today?
Oh yes. Well,
And
you
what made her that way, do you think,
Well,
Melissa?
can you I mean, I don't know about your mother, but remember them growing up in the 30s and 40s and 50s, and they come of age in the, 50s and 60s, and my mother was extremely intelligent. She really was. She started as a secretary just to make extra money, because my father was a teacher, and unfortunately we don't pay our teachers here. And so she started making extra money, and it was the time when computers were just being made, and she was hired by Booz Allen, the financial company or whatever it was in Kansas City, and she was 100% Hidden Figures. They sent her in because she could understand how to program she used to tell me when computers were as big as whole rooms, and she would do that, and she
I
got really good
remember
at it.
that. I remember seeing those ads. Remember, they were just like wall to wall, big,
Well,
massive things.
yes. And so she could understand it. And she was hired by the Army base. We had Leavenworth and Fort Leavenworth, and they hired her, and she worked in war games and scenarios, and she would do all these computer uh, computations, and the generals would take them and take all the credit, and she would get paid half of what everyone else was paying. And I don't know how else she was treated, but she was just angry the whole time because she got no credit and no money for what she did. And yeah, I'd be a little cranky too at the end of the day, and so I do understand. I understand that women back then were highly underused, underappreciated, and she was absolutely a part of that.
You also write about your older sister, Jenny.
Yeah.
Um, Gosh, Melissa.
It's well, look, there are people that have had worse lives, than me.
No, no, I know that, but
Yeah,
this was like she sexually abused you
yeah,
from the age of 6 or 7.
yeah. It's about 7 or 8, I think, and till about when I was 12, and went, no, stop, and it's that's again no fun as a kid, and you kind of it can mess you up a little bit, but I'm not going to be tethered to that. I freed myself from that. I went on from that. It became that's so far distant for me that it's almost funny talking about it. And her life, she was just miserable. She just had a miserable life, and and still kind of is. But we don't talk. It's just a fine understanding that we just were two people that happened to be in the same family together.
How strange, though. I haven't heard of a sister really sexually abusing another sister that often. Is that
Yeah,
unusual?
no, yeah, I think it is. I think she was being sexually abused somehow, not from my parents, but somehow in the family system. I think it was happening. I don't know where. Long time ago, I tried to talk to her about it, and it was just she was just kind of disconnected from it. So I think it was happening to her because children act out what's happening to them. So you know, there you go.
It seems to me that music sort of was your lifeline. I mean, you're an incredible lyricist and obviously musician, but I have to believe that all these traumas and all these kind of feeling unloved by your mother, all these things fed into your music, as well
Oh,
as your relationship with your father, because you write about music being the communication between the two of you. So, can you just talk about that a little bit, Melissa, and how that music fed your soul at a time where your soul needed feeding so much?
well, yeah, when you're in a situation that is not feeding you, not giving you the energy you're looking for, you're gonna go. I always call it that kids go where it's warm. They just naturally are gonna go there. My father was very warm. He was very fun. He was understanding. He wasn't the smartest guy, but he was clever, and he loved music. He didn't play music, but he loved it. He played the records all the time, and the radio was on, and so it filled my life, and it lifted sort of the heaviness that was in our house. You grew up in the 60s and 70s, and a lot of us, it was like we were supposed to pretend everything's okay. And you're like, yeah, but my sister is really losing it here, but you're all pretending that everything's okay. And that sort of messes you up. So that tension that can build, music released it. And I would love nothing more than to grab my guitar and go into a room by myself and play. That made me very happy. It pushed all of that. I didn't have to worry about any of that outside of me. And it just grew from there. And my father, he was never one to say, "Oh, Melissa, you're really good. You're going to be big." He never said anything like that. He just never said, "You can't do it." He was like, "Oh, you need a ride? I'll take you there. I will take you here. I will do that." He was available, and just that availability enabled me to grow my musical career.
I'm trying to picture you as a young girl sitting on your beanbag chair, listening to your dad put record after record on the turntable, and I'm wondering what kind of music he played.
Oh, he loved Neil Diamond. So he loved singer-songwriters, which really, affected me. I listened to a lot of Paul Simon, Simon and Garfunkel, Neil Diamond. Neil Diamond would I remember him playing me one of Neil Diamond's albums, and Neil Diamond covered a song by Randy Newman. It was called I Think It's Gonna Rain Today. Beautiful song. And one of the lines was, scarecrows dressed in the latest styles, broken smiles that chase love away. Human kindness is overflowing, and I think it's going to rain today. And he said, you see how he writes that? And he's describing, metaphors and things and how they work to me, and how, he's talking about people walking down the street, and human kindness is overflowing is an overstatement. And he's showing me how to write and what moves people in the mind when you're writing. And I'm so grateful for that. It was like a class in songwriting.
Was your dad telling you that, or were you just learning this from Neil Diamond and the other artists your dad loved?
Well, he would just play me a line and go, gosh, isn't that great? I knew that he would love it. And so I would pick it apart and go, oh my gosh, what is it that's so great about this? And I would listen
Oh,
to
how cool. Yeah. So that was obviously incredibly formative for you as a songwriter. And you
it.
realized after a talent show when you're 11 years old, hey, I'm going to be a famous musician.
Yeah, yes, from Kansas, a woman, rock star. There is none, but I'm going to do that.
Take
Yeah.
us back to that talent show and what you
Oh
played
my
and
gosh.
how it clicked.
I can't wait for you to come see the Broadway show, because this is some of these parts, play in the show.
Well, I'm
But
coming tonight, so
are you really? Oh, I'm
yeah.
so glad you're gonna love it, because I actually talk about the guy who put the talent show together. He was from like Philadelphia. He was just passing through. He's sort of like the Music Man kind of guy. He was a ventriloquist, and this is 1972 or something, or
Sounds
73.
like Professor Harold Hill.
Exactly. And he took all the things from the talent show, all the acts, and he made a variety show. And we would go around to old folks' homes and the prisons in Leavenworth, in prisons.
Wow.
And yeah, we would play for real audiences. And I'm 12 years old thinking, this is awesome, and it gave me a chance to play in front of people, to start writing songs and consider, oh, I've got to write this for our next thing. And from there, I found a band that was playing around town, and my whole career just grew from there.
And did you just were you a natural born singer? Did people say, wow, Melissa, you've got an incredible, I mean, your voice is so unique and so special. Did people say, wow, you've got a particular sound? And I know you say that you've always wanted to sing like Carole King. And I think it's interesting because you do have similarities, I think, in your voices.
Yeah, I listened to Tapestry a lot because she was a singer-songwriter. And actually, Tapestry was the first album that my father ever got just for me on
Uh-huh.
Christmas.
I
And
listened to that album
well,
8 trillion times. I
yes,
was in
over and over and
you
over.
must have been in like 4th or 5th grade when it came out. Maybe 4th, because
Yeah.
I think it came out when I was in 7th grade. And
Oh, that's
I'm 4 years older than you are.
okay. Yeah, so it was that time, and the music that was out then, just delicious. And now I've forgotten your question, but yes, Carole
Oh,
King.
no, I think I was asking if people immediately, so you're traveling around Kansas, you're
Oh, my voice,
performing.
right?
Yeah, do people say, "Wow,
Well,
girl, you've got it."
when I was in a choir, I was in a church choir and would sing. The choir director would put me in the back row because my voice was so strange. And I should have been like a tenor or a baritone singing with the boys, but they weren't going to do that with me. And later, as I started singing in bands, uh, I was told, hey, I like your voice because I was able to sing kind of popular songs. But when I was in school and stuff, people were kind of like, what's that voice? It sort of stood out, and it was not a pleasant standing out.
Well, it's so different, I think,
Yes,
it's sort of
yes.
raspy and strong. And I think, I think of people like Janis Joplin, right? And
Mhm.
Carole King with this very unique sound.
Everyone kind of assumed that I drank a lot of whiskey and smoked a lot of cigarettes, and I didn't. I was in those places where people were doing that, but I didn't. I just my father, the one thing, the only thing he ever really told me is kind of a not a critique, but advice. He was like, "Don't sing through your nose." He used to say that, and I didn't know quite what he meant, so I kept pushing all my sound into my chest, and everything I sang was really big so that I wouldn't sing through my nose. And so I think that I sort of trained my voice to be this kind of large sound.
Well, whatever happened, it worked. And you talk about, you write about in the book, sort of dealing with your sexuality. And, sometimes I think about, and again, because we're contemporaries,
Mhm.
what it was like for gay people when we
Mm.
were little kids. I grew up in Virginia, you're in Kansas, and how much has changed now. And it's just remarkable to me how much I hope, and I don't know if you agree with me, how much progress has been made, how
Oh,
much more acceptance there is. I
oh,
mean, I remember my gym teacher thinking,
yeah.
"Oh, Miss Beats and Miss So and So live in the same house. Like, what's that about?" And but we never kind of even, I remember my dad talking about somebody he worked with, who he thought was gay, and I don't think my dad even used the word gay.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
how he described him, but it was so secretive and such a subculture, and it must have been really hard. Even though, I mean, how hard was it?
Yeah. How hard was it? Yeah. It to go through adolescence, and there was a knowing that started happening around 8th or ninth grade when all my girlfriends were, "Isn't Bobby so cute? Isn't Mark so cute?" And I'd go, I don't know, what do you mean?" And then I would, like, watch, The Bionic Woman and go, "Isn't Lizzie Wagner so beautiful?" Or something like that, and then I started feeling this way about maybe certain girls in school, and I'd go, "Oh, well, that's, what's that?" And then I remember in about 8th grade, someone in gym class or something going, "Oh, she's a lessy." I was like, what's a lessy?" I didn't know. "Oh, that's a girl that likes other girls." And I went, "Oh, there's something wrong with this. Oh, this is," and the first thing when the first
And
thing
they
you hear,
weren't talking about you; they were talking
"Oh,
about
no, they're talking to
another girl.
somebody else." Yeah.
Yeah.
Who was not, they were just calling somebody names. And you realize, oh, this is a bad thing. This is a thing that you call somebody else, and then you have that deep sinking feeling, oh, maybe that's me. Maybe I am. And you go through high school. I had a boyfriend and tried and was like, I like this guy as a person, but I
Not
feel
attracted
nothing
to him.
else. I feel
Yeah.
nothing else after that. And then, well, God, you have to come see the show. I can't wait for you to see it tonight because I talk about the first time I ever kissed a girl. And it just blew my mind, and you just realize that even though it wasn't spoken about, it was not in popular culture. There was nothing. The first thing I ever saw was the Billie Jean King and the trouble she got into. That was the first thing I ever saw in the newspapers. And I remember standing there looking at it, thinking, "Oh, you get in trouble when this happens." And so you keep it to yourself. This is a deep dark secret because you're gonna. And then once you kind of turn 18, the first thing you think is, I got to get out of this small town and go to a bigger city where there's more of us that gather. And that's why the bars used to be such a safe place, because you could go there, you could meet other people, and community was very important. then in the 80s, when AIDS came, those communities became politically active. We realized we were dying and nobody cared. And it really affected us. And some of the smartest and strongest of our leaders got together. And those are the people that I knew back in the late 80s and early 90s, that when I finally said, look, this is who I am, and I came out and started talking about it, I was already very educated, and I had been within this community for 10 years, and had learned the importance of people seeing someone gay. And still to this day, people will come to me and say, you got me through my childhood. You were the only other person I knew that was gay. And it means so much to me to see artists now who just are gay, and it doesn't matter. That's just a part of who they are. And it's okay. And this just brings me so much joy. And all the other mishigash that's going on in our politics is just the politics of division, and no matter what, we are definitely getting better. It's getting better.
You talk about a relationship you had, your first, with a woman, Jane, the colonel's daughter, you call her, and you say that this set up a pattern for you uh, that would repeat itself in future relationships. What happened with Jane, and how did it keep manifesting itself over and over again?
Well, I wouldn't blame it on Jane. It was the dynamics that came from my mother and my sister, that sort of, messed upness with them, the unavailable, the coldness, and the sort of psychoticness, it combined, that sort of troubled person. Oh, that's attractive to me. That's, you find yourself being attracted to sort of that situation. And so the more as we started the conversation with, the more I was looking for it outside of myself to fix the emptiness inside of me, the more I was going to get that trouble. And that was the first, couple serious relationships in my life, were looking for, oh, I need someone who is really interesting and dark and gorgeous and beautiful, because I'm not. And, these things that you think, okay, this person is going to fill that up in me. And then me, the pleaser, I'm going to make the world all right for you. I held back the world for you. I did this. I'm going to do everything so that you will love me. And it's just a really dangerous hole to dig yourself in. It will give you cancer.
Well, we'll talk about that in a moment, but that's
Yeah.
why that line in what was it called? Good Lord, I just with Renee and Tom Cruise and
Oh,
Jerry Maguire.
you complete
That's
me.
what that's why that line in Jerry Maguire was so dangerous and such a
Yes.
bad,
Yes. Yeah.
sort of a way to go through life. You complete me.
Yeah.
And I think that it's better to say you, um, what would be a better word than complete?
You delight me. Boy, there's a word that we're both looking for, but between
I
our
know. What
brains,
is that word? Wait, what is that word?
compliment me.
Oh, thank you. I
Yes,
just thought of it too. You
yes,
compliment me,
yes.
right?
It works together. Yes.
Right. Well, we could, between the two of us, we
Yes,
actually came up with it.
yes.
I have to ask you about your relationship with Julie Cypher, because you were
Mhm,
together for more than 10 years. You had two
mhm,
kids, fathered by, of course, David Crosby, pretty
mhm.
famously. And you split up in 1999. And there must have been a lot of pressure on you, Melissa, because I know breaking up with Julie made you feel like you were letting down the gay community.
Oh, very much so. I felt like, I had gone out to be this, famously out person with a famously, family, uh, being one of the first, out families of the gay community. And it's okay to be, gay and have children. And back then that was really, really not okay to a
Right,
lot of
right.
people.
That was, you were one of the first public gay couples
Yeah.
who
And to
you were
then,
raising a family.
like, and then 2 years later go, yeah, our family's broken now. It it hurt even more than the getting out, because the getting out was good for me. I needed to find my happiness. I was not happy. It was not a healthy relationship. So, that was good for me, but the feeling of shame of letting everyone down was really dark. Very much so.
What do you think that you were looking for her to complete you? Were the same
Oh,
dynamics playing over with that relationship?
yes. I think one of the har it's so funny because I look back now and I just think I was just so crazy and so stupid just to believe that I wasn't attractive. There's a this need it came with the wanting to be, famous and a rock star, and I want to be in the public eye. I want to give my music and have people listen, and then I'm going to be a very visual person, especially in the 80s and 90s when that was everything, was the cover of the magazine and how we looked, and
And
it was
music videos.
music videos were huge, and I was not a fashionable person at all. I was most comfortable in my jeans and t-shirts, which I should have just stayed with, but you try to please, and you think you have to be something else than what you are to make it, and you hire someone else to do it. So, oh, if I have this really attractive, dark, gorgeous wife, then they'll think I'm attractive somehow. So that was so much a part of it, which is so shallow when I say it. It's like, God, but so true. The insecurity was really there, and it tortured me for a long time. And now I look back and go, I think I'm just so ridiculous. I think I was very attractive when I was younger, and I just never ever saw it.
We just waste so much time worrying about this and comparing ourselves to other people, and it is such a fool's errand to be full of self-loathing and to feel like you're less than. But society really pushes us to think that way.
Yeah.
And what society values, what images we are accosted by on a regular basis. So, I mean, I want to say it's not necessarily your fault or my fault when I would be critical or never think I was thin enough or you never thought you were pretty enough.
Yeah. I mean, now, yeah, I look back and know that, oh, it was so much of it was what I was seeing where I was at, and just the lack of the kind of support, either family support or, peer support of, no, we're all fine. And that's why I really
Especially
look at
back then.
when I look at the younger generations, the millennials, the, Gen Z or whatever they are now. And it's like, oh no, they're going to be okay because there's so many different looks. There's not just this one idealized look that, you have to be. It's just being who you are, being the more individual is actually celebrated.
It makes me think of what David Cassidy said on his deathbed, which wasn't really about caring about his appearances, but it was about not repairing his relationships. Do you know what he said?
No, what?
So much wasted time.
No.
That makes me so sad,
Well,
but it also makes me think about things.
yes, getting back to ayahuasca, that's the sort of knowledge you come back with, and you don't have to be dying, because like I said, it's the same sort of experience when you realize, oh no, why did I waste all that time thinking I wasn't enough, I wasn't good enough? When those thoughts don't serve anything, if I just looked up and looked out, I could have seen, oh, this is delicious. I can enjoy this more. We are here to enjoy things. We really are. And we put ourselves through so much.
I have to ask you about your breast cancer because we talked a
Mhm.
little bit about
Yeah.
this with Andy Cohen, which was a funny setting to talk about it. But
Yeah.
any setting, honestly, is an important setting, I think, to get it out in the open. And you were diagnosed in 2004, Melissa. You were just 43 years old.
Yeah.
Um, and I know you decided to stop chemo when you decided to perform at the Grammys. Bald as a cue ball because you went through a lumpectomy, but also because you had a lot in your lymph nodes. You
Mhm.
also needed to get chemotherapy and radiation,
Yep.
and it took its toll. But tell me about performing at the Grammys when you were bald as a cue ball and you sang this incredible tribute to Janis Joplin.
Well, it was after I had decided not to stop my chemo treatments. I'd been through I'd just been through that spiritual thing and understanding about my body, and I thought, you know what, give me a little. I'm gonna I'm gonna try to do it this way. I'm trying to really heal myself from the inside out, and I was gonna walk a different path, less stress, less self-loathing, all those things. And so I really was. So I stopped. I was still doing radiation, and I went to radiation that morning of the show. I hadn't been out in public at all for 3 months, about three, almost 4 months. I hadn't been out, and I got radiation that morning. I told my radiologist, what I was doing. I'm going to be on the Grammys tonight. Watch me. I had no idea what the response would be. I really didn't. I was backstage with my band, and Joss Stone. She also sang uh, we sang together Janis Joplin song. She sang "Cry Baby," and I sang "Piece of My Heart." And Joss was back then. She was a big fan, and she was really sweet. And I was telling her she'd never been on the Grammys, and I was doing the old veteran thing of saying, well, nobody, the Grammys are the worst audience to perform for. They just sit there. They don't give you anything. They're all just, concerned about how they look. And so if, don't
Have low expectations.
have low expectations. Don't think that anything's, going to happen. And my guitar player walks over to me and he looks at me and goes, Melissa, you don't know what you're about to do you? And I looked at him and went, huh? What are you saying? And then once I took the stage and the reception I got, I mean, I still get choked up about it. The hugely warm reception I got singing. And even though I was really weak, that was probably the weakest I've ever been when I was singing. I remember I was singing the song and thinking, wow, I got to save my energy for that scream at the end. There's the big Joplin scream I was going to do at the end. And so I just sort of stood there, which I think made the performance on camera better because they were able to just focus on me. I didn't kind of move around and stuff. And I let out the scream. I finished the song. The crowd went crazy. I was so 100% wrong about the crowd, right?
And I'm sure Joss Stone was saying, that bitch just set me up.
I know, Joss is beautiful. She was wonderful. She was very, very great. But I was like, oh, I was wrong. Sorry. And I went home and I didn't think about it. There was no, there wasn't really social media back then, not really. And so it wasn't until a couple days later, because I went home and I went to bed. I just went to sleep. And that my best friend, now my wife, called me and said, oh my God, you're all over everywhere. You're all over the news. People are having discussions about you and baldness and cancer. And I was like, what are you talking about? And it just blew up. And still to this day, I still get people. I met a little girl in a bookstore. She was in a wheelchair and she was bald. I'm like, oh, she's in treatment. And I just feel so much for the young ones that are going through it. And I just approached her, and her father was talking to somebody. And I just said, oh, I just want to say I went through this. And the father looks down. She goes, oh, honey, remember that video I showed you? This is the woman.
Aww.
So it still touches me all the time.
I'm sure. Well, it was such a memorable, and the visual of it, Melissa, was just so dramatic, coupled with this, the voice, the powerful voice you were able to summon, probably propelled by all the love you felt in that room.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
You dedicate the book to your son, Beckett. And as I said, I just marvel at your resilience, but the roller coaster ride that has been your life. And you lost your son, and it's so upsetting because I know he started taking Vicodin after a snowboarding accident. And like so many people in this country, became addicted to opioids, which is just so infuriating.
Yeah, his life before he started Vicodin, he was not I wouldn't call him a happy individual. He was one that sort of had a hard time. He he had a hard time finding happiness. And so it's that sort of personality, that sort of individual that can then, man, if you give them something that not only takes the physical pain away, but numbs that dissonance inside of them, yeah, that's going to be addictive. And then physically, if you don't take it, you're going to feel bad. Then you're stuck. You don't have the willpower. You don't have the ability. You don't have the tools at all to get out of it. And he went in and out of rehabs, and the tools of just don't do it, and here's therapy to talk about all the bad things you went through, is not really working. It's not. And that's why I started the Etheridge Foundation. It raises money to provide research in psychedelics that are helping with this. It's directly to help with opioid use disorder, but there's so much other research. You hear about psilocybin and cancer, people that have cancer, and what is it when hospice, helps with people that are at the end of life, and
Also with PTSD, all
all
kinds of
these things that
things.
it helps so much. So and it's still, these are still Schedule 1, which is saying there's no medical, there's no medical data that it's any good. So we are providing the research and the medical data so that we can come and change this, so these things can be available. And that makes me feel like I'm doing something to move this forward.
There's so many exciting developments in this area of research. I think we just scratched the surface, and I think it's really, really fascinating, and it's changing lives for a lot of people. You live streamed a concert that you called the Heal Emmy concert, and in that you sang something to your son.
It was You Are My Sunshine, right? Yeah, that's a song I used to always sing to my kids, to put, as lullabies when it was time to go to bed. I would just sing a few songs to them. It was one that I sang because it's such a sweet melody, but I would sing it, and I would try not to make it so sad, because it's actually a very sad song. The second verse, the other night, dear, as I lay sleeping, I dreamed I held you in my arms. When I awoke, I was mistaken, and I hung my head and cried, is the second verse
Oh, I
of You
know.
Are My
I forgot
Sunshine.
about that.
It's like, I would only try to sing like the first verse over and over, but it was it was something I sang all the time to all of my children.
Let's talk about the show, Melissa Etheridge, My Window, which the New
Mhm.
York Times describes as a rock concert spliced with memoir.
Mm.
So, what made you want to do a Broadway show, Melissa? I mean, you're like, I've done this, I've done that. Why not go to Broadway?
Well, I've deeply loved Broadway from as a child. I mean, I just adored Barbara Streisand and everything she did. And it sort of went from there to things like Godspell and Jesus Christ Superstar and Hair. Just loved that sort of stuff. And Broadway was always this very magical place that that to me was a step, let's just say, apart from sort of popular music and the way you can manipulate pop music. You can't manipulate someone standing on a stage singing to you. You just that's real, that's raw talent. And the writing and the gathering and moving a live audience with story like that, there's just nothing else. And there never will be. It's such a pure form of entertainment. And my wife and I, for years, even before we were together, we were always trying to create something for television or Broadway. And when I actually saw Bruce Springsteen do his thing, I went, okay, there's a door that now I can go in. I can say, look, Bruce did this. I want to do sort of a amalgamation of what he did and a Broadway show. I want to create a rock concert memoir. It's a linear story of my songs, of me, of my life, of the book you just read. It's the whole, it's that in 2 hours. And it's
Must have been
very
so
satisfying.
fun to combine those two creative exercises, writing, and you're a beautiful writer, which isn't a surprise when you listen to your lyrics, but your writing and your musicality and have them marry in this production, right? I mean, that's a pretty cool thing to be able to do. What's your favorite moment in the show?
Oh, there's so many. There's so many that I didn't know would be my favorite until the audience got there, and I was like, "Oh, they're having so much fun." One is where the theater I'm in is called is Circle in the Square, and it's almost in the round. I'm able to go out into the audience, and there's a couple times that I do that are so much fun. And so there's when I do the song, I want to come over. It's just ridiculous. The whole audience is with me, really understanding every line now a little better because I've given them the background on what's happening.
Oh, that's cool. That's right. And sort of
Yeah,
the life experiences that have informed your lyrics, where you
yeah.
were, what you were thinking. I love stuff like that because I love to understand the genesis of a song and why did they write this, what was happening, and oh, I'm really excited about it. Before we go, I know Andy and you and I talked about the fact that you are not sadly in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I hope you are at some point. You've won 2 Grammys, an Academy Award. Maybe you'll be up for a Tony after this Broadway show. But and you said whatever, but Andy referred to Jan Wenner's quote, and I just want to read it because it's so annoying
That's
that
a
he
good
said
word.
this. He obviously is the founder of Rolling Stone magazine. He wrote a new book about his interviews, and he's facing criticism for saying that black and female musicians were not articulate enough to be included in his new book, which features 7 interviews with white male rock and roll icons. Winner said the many interviewed were kind of philosophers of rock, and that no female musicians were, quote, as articulate enough on this intellectual level as the men. And I'm thinking, what? And he even said Joni Mitchell was not a philosopher of rock and
No.
roll. And I was just like, what was he smoking when he made these insane, idiotic, like tone deaf? And I mean, even if he thinks it, the
I know,
fact that he
don't
said it,
it. Oh, I know. And you know what? It really set me free. It really did because I used to be a little tortured about in the 90s thinking, I mean, I was on the cover once, but they never gave me a favorable review except for The Awakening. That was the one album, which is like barely anybody knows about that album that I made. And, but they didn't even review Yes, I Am. They didn't think it was good enough to even review. And I kept taking it so personally. This was back in the days when I took it personally. And because Rolling Stone, to someone like me who followed rock and roll, who followed music, that was the voice in which it told us what was good, you
right?
know.
You knew you
And if
made it. I mean,
right
there's even who wrote that song,
on
the
the cover
cover
of the
of
Rolling
the,
Stone, Dr. Hook and the Medicine
yeah,
Show, and to realize, oh my God, I was trying to join this club where the man hated women and blacks, and how am I going, wait a minute,
do I really
even
want to
though,
be a member of that club?
do I really want to be a member of that club? And it set me free. It's like, oh, and he also is on the founding board of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which has been criticized for years over not, over just
They
being a
kicked
white
him
male
off.
thing.
They kicked him
Yes, they
off
did.
after that.
So who maybe we'll see different now, but it really freed me to go, oh, okay, right. No, I can't look outside of myself for that acceptance. I have to know that my music has changed lives, that it has touched people. And every time an audience comes to see me, there are people there who love this music, who cherish it. And that's all that's my success. And that really helps me sleep at night. And it yeah. Oh, yeah. What are you thinking? What are you thinking?
I know I keep saying before we go, but I realized I didn't ask you about the title of this new book, Talking to My Angels.
Mhm. Well, one of the songs on my Yes I Am album is Talking to My Angel, and I wrote it after my father died, and my father, who was very close to me. So uh, it's about leaving. It's about change. It's about keeping that person, even though they're not physically with you, there, and being able to draw on it and get, warmth and comfort from them. And so, with having lost my father, with having lost my son, and understanding that he's in that place now of no pain, of non-physical, where if I'm joyous and happy, then I can connect with him because he is too. And so it's that song, and it's just explaining that that's what I'm doing, is talking to my angels.
Well, Melissa, it's been so fun talking to you, and I'm excited to see you tonight. Maybe I'll
Yeah.
do a little postscript about after seeing your show, which is called My Window.
My window. Come to my window. How clever.
Come to my window.
Come
Oh,
on,
God.
Katie. Sing it. Right on. You'll have to come back and say hi to me afterwards.
I will. I'd love to. Anyway, thanks so much. Get some rest. Rest your voice. And I'll see you tonight.
See you. Thank you so much, Katie.
Thanks, Melissa. Bye.
Bye.